And we'll get started with our evening. We always like to start off with a prayer, and Edia is going to knock that out for us tonight, knock it out of the park.
Let us stand to honor God. Oh, merciful God, our Father, we thank you, we bless you, and we praise your holy name. You've been so good and so kind to us. It has been unbelievable. Pulled us out of deep pits. And even when we stood on mountaintops to survey the land that you're going to possibly give us, it was a blessing. And especially tonight, CNM has been a blessing to us. So many people to help us, so many people to counsel us, to lift us up, to bring us to the place where we feel like we can do it. We can put that one foot in front of the other. We can roll out one more time. We just want to thank you for that. We want to especially thank you tonight for the servant that you are bringing before us. We're just going to sit back. We are going to wait for the blessing to roll, because we know that every time you have something for us, you have a gift for us, you have one of the finest banquets ever. And so we're expecting great things. So before we do that, we're going to praise you once again. We're going to honor you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. How about that? Is that the way to start off the evening? I think it is. That's a long ball. That's a long ball. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's a cool night to get together. One of the last cool nights of the summer, I think. Humidity's starting to build out there in the parking lot. Could you feel it as you were coming in? I mean, it's about time for summer to hit us over the head with a little bit of temperature and a little bit of sweat. So I, for one, am looking forward to it. It was a long winter.
Yeah.
Hey, while we're getting settled in, I want everybody to think about the worst thing that's happened to them all week. I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about it in terms of how you would tell somebody else and put a positive spin on it. So you're going to have about 30 seconds. You're going to do an exchange, and we're going to stand up, do a bit of a networking thing here in just a second. But I want you to think on it. I want you to stew on it. We got a couple of announcements. I've got one that's rather lengthy to read, but does anybody else have any announcements before we start? Okay, as you know, there's a whole host of volunteers that are around the room, and this place wouldn't function without them. From interviewing skills, marketing plans, we've got everything that you could imagine. Resume review, most of you have been at one or two of those tables. How many of y'all have enjoyed the majority of tables in the room? I mean, when you say that, I mean, you've gone over, you've visited, you've gone through an evening with it, and you've basically done what they could do for you. It's pretty incredible how much talent is in this room. And I want to take a minute to invite you, if you have the extra time and you have the willingness to give back a little bit, tonight I want you to think about becoming a volunteer at CNN. Now, our number one job here is to not raise volunteers. It's to raise people who graduate into jobs, right?
Yeah.
And so your whole purpose in life is to make sure you've got the faculties you need that are polished and ready to go out and hit the streets, and you can sing the songs and dance the dance and win the job, right?
Woohoo!
When you're at a point where you think you've got the areas mastered, it's time for us to consider volunteering. And we've got a whole bunch of them. There's the accountability group, the room setup, resume reviews, and lots of others. But I'm going to read you a couple of opportunities here. And I know the guy who wrote these out, his handwriting is very bad, so bear with me just for a second. The accountability group is to advise members on key metrics to track during their search. And to serve as accountability advisors while potentially helping them find or connect with an accountability partner. Now, I know that there's been many times where I've wanted an accountability partner and I haven't reached out to that table. If you are willing to volunteer either at that table or as an accountability partner, it would be a great thing for you to go and seek out Bo tonight or any one of the leadership team here, and I would be happy to take your name down and see what we could do to move you forward. There's the room setup. I don't know if you know it, but at the end of every one of these evenings, we end up doing a lot of tearing down of tables, but when we walk in the evening, there's nothing that's set up here or out in the hallway. And so that takes some time. If you have the time and the weak back and the strong mind, or, well, maybe I got that backwards. If you got that strong mind and a strong back, and you can show up at 5 o'clock, we sure could use your help in setting it up. It takes 30 to 45 minutes. Many hands makes for light work, and so if you can do it and volunteer, you don't have to do it every week, but we sure would like for you to come in as your time allows. And the last one is the resume reviews. Now, it's one of the most valuable tables here. It's one of the reasons why many people come in here is because of this ability that we have to shape and help you master your road ahead with regard to your resume. We review and advise members on how they can improve their resume to the top of the pile, to move it to the top of the pile. And we kind of, if you've got an HR background at all, it's absolutely the right place for you to be, but there's several others you would fit in without question. But if you got an HR background and you can help out with that resume review thing, we would be grateful for your presence here. If you're not an HR person and you've got experience hiring as a hiring manager, it's another great place for you to be, is right there at the resume review table. If it's in your heart, if you're being moved to actually help out, there's a couple of benefits to it. If you're currently out of work, there's nothing that can fill that void like volunteer time. And all employers value that. What did you do in between jobs? Well, I served in a ministry called Career Network Ministry, where I helped other people land key positions. And it sounds great, and it looks great on a resume. Okay, anything else? Any other announcements? Okay, so why don't everybody stand up? Everybody stand up. Be careful with your eyes right now. Be careful, because the first person you look at and you make eye contact with, you're going to go and not whine, not tell them about what a miserable existence you're living in, but you are going to tell them the worst thing that happened to you this week with a positive spin. You'll start with your name, and then you'll go into your story, no more than 30 seconds, and then end with your name. If you've got a card, you can exchange it, and then you're going to hear the story on the other side. Is everybody sabi? Now the correct response to that is yes. Wakarimasu, Sanji-san. Go ahead, try that. No, that's fine. Okay, so ready? Make eye contact with somebody right now, and go and start that network. Sit down. I was nice, I was congenial, I was matter of fact, and now I'm going to be turned into a DI. Okay, we're going to have to add a new category to the volunteer list. Cattle prods and whips are going to have to be inserted in it. And if you're good with either, then let us know. Okay, who had the worst story, the worst thing happened to them this week? Who had the worst? Anybody want to volunteer? All right. Are you ready to put a positive spin on it for everybody? All right. Let me get that microphone and we'll see.
I just walked in, so is this about like anything or just job-wise?
This is anything, but you got to put a positive spin on it, and you got 30 seconds.
Okay. So my daughter graduated from 6th grade, and the school she goes to has a ceremony. And she has severe OCD, and so in the middle of the ceremony, she came down and asked me to leave because I was upsetting her by being there. Positive spin on it is that she's only 12, she's going to grow up, she's going to change. She's now living with her father, and I don't have to deal with my in-laws right now because she's living with her father. And my in-laws are not pleasant to me.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Well,
So
it
it's been
sounds
hard
like
to-
you made the best of a bad situation, though. That's a
Yeah.
tough one to swallow. Okay, so really grateful for that. This thought process of being able to go up, look somebody in the eye, and tell them what happened to you in a job situation. You lost the job, and you kind of want to get in and out of that conversation. Well, tell me, John, what happened during your last days at Booz Allen? If I was fired from Booz Allen, I don't want to talk bad about Booz Allen. I want to address the situation. I want to tell them exactly, in a matter-of-fact manner, what happened with a positive spin, and then I want to step out of that conversation as quickly as I can and saying, I learned a lot and I'm ready to apply that in my next job. Something along those lines. And that's what these little drills are all about. They're kind of fun. Some of them are more fun than other ones, and this one was a tough one. Okay, we've got a couple of elevator speeches tonight. Before we do that, a lot of folks standing in the back. There's a whole bunch of seats out front. Please don't feel like you're going to upset the apple cart by coming in late. Come on in, grab a seat, and if we run out of them, we'll start stacking them in the back. We've got victory laps that are here with folks that are kind of graduating from our program. For those of you who are here for your first night, we know who you are with your red name tags. The victory lap is one of the coolest things that we as volunteers can receive, and you as folks who are looking for a job can actually, it's very confidence building when you know somebody is out there and finding work. And so when it comes your time, first nighters, when it comes your time to actually be able to step up and give this speech, you don't want to shy away from it. You want to step into it, because this is not about you. This becomes about the collective us, and it's a powerful, powerful gift you can give us, okay? Before I do ask the elevator speech, or not the elevator speech, but the graduation, the folks that have gotten jobs to come forward, those of you who are wearing red name tags, would you do us the honor of standing up and letting us recognize you? If you're wearing red, please stand up. We were all there, please sit back down. We were all there not so long ago. 4 years ago was my first night here, and they haven't been able to shed me yet. So keep coming back. So we got some cool folks. Melissa, are you here?
Yes.
All right, come on up.
Yes.
You're our first victory lap.
Thanks, John. Hi, and welcome to CNM. Hi. I'm Melissa Sockban, and I've been in transition now for a few months. My former position at Time Warner Cable was impacted due to some centralizing of network operation functions. So I worked in network operations as an analyst, kind of service improvement. Well, the position posted again at Time Warner Cable, and I was like, well, this is a different job, but it's the same thing I was doing. And so, as I learned here at CNM, through some great people like Will Stanford up front, and Bob Korzenewski and Francine Tolson, who just finished the marketing plan, is that when you see something, just go for it. Just go all out. And since I knew several people there, because I put several years in at Time Warner Cable, I applied for the position through their applicant tracking system, and then went and spoke to a colleague, said, hey, put my resume on the guy's desk, the hiring manager's desk. And then I'm like, well, I know the hiring manager. So, and not that I'd worked for him previously, but I knew him, and he knew me. So I sent him a direct email saying, hey, I've posted for this position, and I'd be a great fit, like a really great fit. And so he then called me like a day later and said, and offered me the position. And so I started at the end of the month. But again, some things that I learned here at CNM were persistence, and when you need help, ask. So you'll be surprised that when you reach out to people while in transition, that they are willing to help you. They're willing to really go the distance. And so it's just a matter of putting out your hand and asking for it. So best of luck. Thanks.
Okay, that was a great one. Now, Rusty Richards, are you close by, buddy? There you go.
Thank you so much. I am Rusty Richards, and I'm a code breaker. What in the world does that mean? But that is how my elevator pitch began, that I worked on so assiduously with JV Venable and ML and anyone else. If you want to hone your elevator pitch, talk to JV and his cohort. So why am I here? Well, it's not to celebrate the fact that I've been out of work for 6 months. It's to change my elevator pitch. Hi, I'm Rusty Richards, and I've got a job. Well, one thing I found was I'm not going to get any help from recruiters who call me up from New Jersey telling me that they found me on the web on, I don't know where, Dice or Career Builder or Monster.com, and we've got a position that's a perfect fit for you, and what's your rate, and who knows what else. Never any help from them. And certainly I've not found no help from sitting in front of the computer and trolling all those websites to find out, well, what open positions are there that I could apply for, and I apply for them, and it goes into the black hole, which is why whenever any recruiter tells me, well, just go onto the website, we've got all our open positions there, I give him a little card that I've printed out. It's the black hole card, special for him, and I write his name on it. They've never appreciated that. What have I been doing over the last 6 months? Well, there are times when I've found myself staring blankly into a television screen, listening to this thing talk at me. Here's a tip. If you find yourself home alone with the television talking at you, looking at you, and you're staring back at it, turn it off. Another tip, if you find yourself home alone, trying to find a job, get out of the house. You're not going to find a job there at home. Unless you're working on replying to people who have written to you, telling you that we've got a great opportunity for you. Here's something I'd like you to consider. Fine, that's a good thing to do, but get out of the house. Now, what I've been doing, various get out of the house activities. I went to a health information technology conference. Someone gave me a ticket to that. It was an expensive conference. I couldn't afford it, but she gave me her ticket. I went to a leadership breakfast in Maryland, a virtual learning conference in DC, all sorts of free conferences and opportunities to meet people who have jobs, who are actually employed, and who can maybe put you in touch with people. I met Tom Salucci. Ever heard that name? He was the chief commercialization officer of the United States government under the Department of Homeland Security through one of these events that I went to. You never know who you're going to... I met John Mather, a Nobel laureate who is the chief scientist at NASA, working with the James Webb Space Telescope, the successor to the Hubble. Is he going to give me a job? No, but we've had some wonderfully arcane conversations since I met him. But that was as a result of volunteering at a conference we helped put on that drew together project managers, system security personnel, professional engineers for a conference to talk about things that mattered to all of us in common. And I'll soon be finished. Yes, stay-at-home activities. The ones that I've found, as I said, useful are writing emails. ML, you said, what am I going to say to all my LinkedIn contacts? Well, who knows? Just be yourself. Just pour out your heart. Tell them about your interest in working with animals. Tell them about your interest in bicycling. They'd like to hear that. They're tired of all these very boring emails about nothing that no one cares about. They want to hear about your passions, right? You could tell them about that. And they might say, have I got the job for you? You never know. For example, I sent out an email end of May to all my LinkedIn contacts. I downloaded all my contacts into a CSV file. I configured Gmail to accept SMTP settings. I imported the contacts into Outlook. I used Word to set up a mail merge. Mailed it out into a quasi-personalized email to all 600 contacts. You could do that. I'll show you how, if you're interested. But what happened? A lot of people wrote back and said, what in the world is this all about that you're telling me about? And I responded, I said, thanks. I wanted to see if I could confuse someone enough to write back to me, and you did. But one of the people who wrote, a good friend who's been trying to get me a job, said, I'm sending your resume on to my people, and this was on a Friday, and on a Sunday I got a call from Alicia. I didn't have time or opportunity to talk to her then. We had an interview. The next day I was in a panel interview with her boss and her boss's boss, and that night I got an offer of a job. I think I've said enough. All I want to say is this: find your passion, pursue it, and make an impact on the world.
How about that? Well, we've got one more to go tonight. Clyde, you want to give it a swing?
I do. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Clyde. And I was thinking about my first night was about 8 months ago, last September. And I was kind of discouraged at that point. I'd been a Christian since I accepted Jesus as my Savior when I was 15 years old. And my faith stuck with me, and I figured that God had a plan for me. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get a job. It had been years. And I was very discouraged, and so was my wife and my kids. I was divorced. I sold my car to pay the mortgage, and then I sold my daughter's car, so she wasn't too happy about that. And so I basically had to move out here to Fairfax County and regroup, and I got a job in retail. But when I came here, it felt different. And I'm here tonight to say this program works. And I got a job, and you can too. The first night that I came, JV was the speaker. And I remember a couple of things that he said. I thought I was living in an extreme situation. And an extreme situation is how you can really, I think an extreme situation reveals who we are essentially. And when I heard JV's story, I thought that what I thought was an extreme situation was not comparable at all to the extremeness of his situation. And when he discussed faith and the prayer that he would say, I don't want to spoil anything, but it meant a lot to me to know that he said a prayer and he remembered it. He led these men that I had taken my son to see. But anyhow, then when Corzo wrapped up that night, he said, the real question is, how bad do you want it? And I think the way this program works is based on faith and desire. And if you believe, it will happen. But it's hard to hold on to that. But there's so much power in this room with people that you don't even know. And you do, like Melissa said, you have to ask for help. But there is so much help available here in every step of the way. And so 8 months flew by. I became a volunteer here, and I intend to keep volunteering. But it was my elevator speech that got me the job that I have. So thanks, JV.
That's what a hug sounds like, if you were wondering. Well, I think that's all of the announcements. Does anybody have anything else they want to discuss before we go into the presentation tonight? Okay, Bob.
Okay, no announcements. I'm real quick up here because we always like to be a little late for victory laps. That's a really good reason to be late.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody. And
Nice.
we have a real treat tonight. Some of you already know it. That's why you're here. I see some old friends who came back to hear the John Venable gift that he shares with us a couple times a year. But, John, actually, I still remember the elevator speech that John gave me 4 years ago. And one of our volunteers grabbed me and said, you have to talk to this guy. And I remember the beginning of it because it was, I'm John Venable, and I'm the luckiest man alive. And it captures your interest. You can't wait to hear the rest. And then I met his wife and kids, and I know why. But you're going to get to hear his story tonight. Right? So John's a highly decorated Air Force fighter pilot, was commander of the Thunderbirds when he was there. Right? Has since retired, but many years of great service to our country. Has been both a technology exec during that time and a trainer during that time to some of his fellow Air Force execs. But his real passion is to be a professional speaker. So he's also doing that too. And I think you'll be as convinced as I am when he's done that that day will come very soon where he is John Venable, professional speaker. So you're in for a real treat tonight. Join me in welcoming John Venable.
Well, Thank you for the warm welcome. I spent a lot of time in the service and a lot of time overseas, and there were terrorists everywhere. At least I took different routes to escape and evade them. So tonight, the one person who's going to have the biggest challenge of all is Will in trying to track me through this venue. I don't know if it's possible, getting a little bit of a retina burn up here. Dave, could you turn these lights down a little bit and maybe up in the audience?
You're so good looking.
Yeah. That's another reason not to scar the camera. Well, tonight we've got a little bit of an emotional roller coaster ride to go on. I'm going to take you with me through a trip that's my life. And with my life, I hope to give you an example or maybe a couple of thoughts about your own. It's a lot to talk about, so let's get right at it. You guys recognize who this man is here? You know, a lot of us have heroes in life. I mean, real human heroes. Bob Korzenowski is one of the greatest that I've met, and I've got a bunch. I really do. But as far as cartoon characters go, this guy is the heat. This is Bob Parr. You don't know him as the man about town. You know him as Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible. Born with a couple of talents that the rest of us weren't. Strength, speed. He was able to hone those skills as he rose up in his years to where when people got in trouble, damsels in distress, cities being overrun, banks being robbed, they would call out for Mr. Incredible. He would show up and neutralize the threat and bring peace and tranquility to the city. In his heyday, Bob Parr was the best. No one could touch him, and he really was a hero in victory. You know, it wasn't that long ago that Bob was living that life, but for whatever reason, things changed. It may have been just the temperature in the city, I don't know, but they asked him not to be Mr. Incredible anymore. They asked him to step down this position. It could have been his own fault. It could have been the collateral damage he was causing as he went in to waylay on the bad guys. Maybe it was a victim of his own success. He had done so well, he had eradicated the threat, but for whatever reason, the city fathers in his town turned Bob Parr in his heyday into Bob Parr who was absolutely miserable. Going to a job every day that he didn't like, and on top of that, they told him that he couldn't be the guy that he'd always been raised to be. Bob Parr, if he had helped somebody in this job, he was threatened with the loss of his role in this company. And as things very often happen, he saw someone in distress, he rose up to help them, and as soon as he started to take action, he was fired. And that night, Bob Parr drove home, trying to figure out how he was going to tell his wife how he had lost his second job in less than a year. You know, I look around this room, and I look inside myself, and very often, I find Bob Parr. The guy who's screaming to come out, the gal in you, who has done such extraordinary things in your life. And right now, you're sitting back wondering how you got into the straits you're in right now. You know, tonight we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it through a variety of different ways. And it's not a subject about how you got where you are. It's a subject about how you're going to climb out from where you are to where you've always wanted to be. Now, I use a couple of analogies, and please bear with this one. It's been with me for a long time. I've always viewed my life as kind of like a table. When I left my parents' house, they gave me 5 legs, and it was up to me to build the foundation underneath that table. These legs, I could build them into pillars, or I could leave them spindly, however I got them, and it's the table of life. And underneath it, you've got your faith, your family, your friends, your health, and your job. Now, many of us get caught up in life as soon as we leave to go to college or a technical training of any sort. And we only focus on 1 or 2 or 3 of those. And we put that job in the center pedestal, and we make it fat and we make it tall, because that's where your wherewithal, where your worth comes from. It's your income, your pride, your confidence. And if anything ever happens to that job, well, you've got at least 2 more legs to stand on, right? But if you develop them all, if you sit back and think about this and make these legs grow as fat and as tall as you possibly can, to where they almost grow together, your table can withstand the weight of the world. Or more and better yet, your table can be a launching platform to take you on a trajectory that only you can imagine. This is the time to walk through it. This is the time to think about it. You know, I have many things in my life that are very novel. I'm a dreamer. How many of you all are dreamers? How many are successful dreamers? I don't know what it is about me, but I have dreams, some dreams that are just whoppers that I'll never forget, and some that are a little bit too embarrassing to want to recall right up front. But for whatever reason, the great dream giver has delivered every one of them. The one I'm going to tell you about, and the ride I want to take you on right now, is to let you know how very powerful this dream was for me. I was 4 years old when it happened. I wasn't a very bright 4-year-old. I mean, without question, things haven't changed very much over the years. But my dad was a professional semi-pro baseball player, and when he gave that up, he went to work for a steel company, and he gave me a baseball. 4 years old, I'm in the backyard throwing it every night when he comes home, just so he could see me. Throwing it against the brick wall, and little single-story house. We had kind of a slope that went into to the back of the house, and my dad would round the corner, and I'd throw the ball there and make him proud, and then I'd kind of look at him and accidentally, unintentionally throw that ball up on the roof. And it would always get caught in the gutter. My dad would look at me and give me that knowing smile and reach down and pick me up by the backside and put me up on the roof. And I would trundle around acting like I was looking for that ball, but I like being up there way too much to ever want to find it. One night when I was up there, something awfully special happened. Came across so low, so close together, so loud, it made my heart beat out of my chest. I got so excited, I almost fell off the roof of our house. This was it. This was the entry of the dream of my lifetime. You know, I think about it all the time, and I have this hypothesis. It's flawed without question, but I think God gives every one of us a dream. And it's whether we're smart enough to catch it, or whether someone is in close proximity to us that can talk us out of that dream. If my brother had been up on the roof of that house, he was 3 years older, a lot smarter, and I'd turned to him and said, Did you feel that, Jimmy? And he had turned back to me and said, Feel what? I wonder if I would have kept this in my chest. That nobody else was up there. And I got down from that roof, and I had the most powerful urge for the rest of my days. It's with me still. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, I couldn't read worth a flip, but I'd watch television, I'd get magazines that had pictures in it. In 1969, I'm 9.5 years old, my family buys the World Book Encyclopedia. I flip right to the pages on the Air Force, and there staring at me is 4 F-100 Super Sabres painted red, white, and blue. It was the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. I looked at the lead position and I said, that's what I want to do. And ladies and gentlemen, as ignorant as a 10-year-old boy can be, I put that dream up on the horizon and I started reading. That section of the World Book Encyclopedia detailed it. You want to be a pilot, you want to be a fighter pilot that goes on to command the Thunderbirds? Pretty simple. You got to go to college, get your degree, earn your wings, and then get a fighter. And once I did that, I just figured in all of God's good graces that the Air Force would look down on their chosen son and say, John, it's you. Isn't it cool the way a 10-year-old boy will dream? You know, there were a whole lot of pilots in the Air Force back then. And to think I could possibly be the guy who stepped into that shoe, so many different things that could have tripped me up, my own health, anything could have gotten in the way. But I didn't think about what could stop me. I only had that marker up on the horizon and 3 landing points that I knew I had to capture, and as foolish as I was, I just started putting one foot in front of the other and started heading toward those markers. Yeah, high school, I earned my way into a pilot's license. And then college came around, I got my commission, and before I knew it, I was in flight school. And guys and gals, I'm here to tell you the sights and the sounds, the smells, the way the stick felt in my hand, the trim knob, every aspect, it was like I had been there before. It was something so special. I knew that this was the place I was destined to be. When I got into the F-16, I got to fly that thing all around the world. And this feeling of living a dream only became more powerful. The best of my assignments was just outside of Madrid, Spain. Now, we worked long hours on the weekdays, but once every other month or so, the single guys in the squadron would hop into these jets and take off and set sail over the Alps into Italy for Italian food on Friday. Germany for German food on Saturday, and then into London for pub fare to tour that beautiful city. It was just unbelievable. The life of Riley doesn't begin to touch it. By the time we touched down at Madrid on Monday morning, there wasn't a doubt in any of our minds that we were living the life that few rock and roll stars could compete with. You want to talk about excitement for your job, driving to work every day? That was something else. When you love your job this much, when you think about the thing that you do with passion, work's not work, it's fun. You know, I won some baby accolades along the way. I got selected for a special school. You don't know the name U.S. Air Force Fighter Weapons School, but you do know the Navy version of it. It's the Air Force version of Top Gun, and that's me on the left in the picture here. You know, to be in that place, you really were with the best fighter pilots in the world, and to look around and go, this has got to be the coolest place ever. To graduate, for them to let me out with a diploma and one of these patches I got to wear was a great gift. You know, things just got better. 1993 rolls around, I meet a girl, she's really hammered. I keep her drunk for the next several years. and I swindle her into marrying me in 1994. It just got better and better. If you were to ask me, if I had had this diagram in 1995, how my life was stacking up, and what about those big pillars underneath my table, I'd have boasted at you like a fighter pilot only could. I had the coolest job on the planet, and I loved it. I had 5 friends who were firemen. Firemen come running when you call them. We would have given our lives for each other in the air. It really did make a difference of how we lived and how we loved and how we trusted each other. I had a new family. My wife and I had been married in 1995 for about 8 months. 9 months moving into the summer when we got to our first move as a couple. Faith, I was a newly Christian, if that makes sense. Newly Christian, you can do it for me, you can do the math. And I had given my life to Christ in 1995 in a very unusual way. I'll tell you that story in a different sense, but Baptists do it right, and you go for a Dunkin' when the time happens. My health, I was working out 3 to 4 times a week, and I was in pretty phenomenal shape. You know, if you were to tell me that anything could go wrong with this, I'd have called you a liar in a heartbeat. In 1995, I went back and I reflected. I really did this on the goals that I had set as a 10-year-old, and I did pretty good. College, got my degree, got my commission, got my wings, was flying fighters, actually had separated myself from the pack, and really and truly, all the Air Force had to do was look down at this chosen son of theirs and pick him, right? But I've been in the service for 13 or 14 years. When you're at that point in your career and you look around your business, what do you see? I saw some things that were it got me a little disenchanted. I met a couple of Thunderbirds, and they weren't everything I wanted them to be. I didn't think I could go into the organization and do anything with it. I just thought that maybe it was still out there. Every time I saw them fly, I mean, without question, it was something in my heart that went fluttering, just like on the roof of that building. But I also thought it would be just fine. if that never happened. Besides, my life was fantastic, every edge of it. And you want to talk about John Venable living in victory. 1995 was the year. And if you were to ask me if it could get any better than that, I'd have told you I'm not sure. I told you about my life. And now I want you to take a little time to think about your life. I'm going to hand these out in stacks, and I'd like a little help if you would. I want you to take the time to do exactly what I did. If you would turn around and just hand some of those out. These are yours to keep. And once you get a card, settle into it. I want you to take a peek at that front side. And I want you to look at it, and then I want you to zero in on you. But not today. Not the today you. I want you to think about you when you were at your professional best. When everything around you turned in the right direction. And unlike any other exercise that we've done here, where you can sit back and say, I'll do this later, I don't want that. I want you to take out a pen right now, and I want you to take a look at this diagram and read it, and you can see that in your job, I want you to figure out whether it's a plus, a neutral, or a minus. A plus means really good, best seen today. Neutral means pretty good. And then a minus means lacking. When you think of yourself as a professional, qualifications, confidence, drive, and passion, when you were at your best, I want you to make an assessment. Was it a plus? Circle the plus. Was it a minus? Or was it a combination? Go ahead and make it happen now. How about your family? During the time when you were at your professional best, tell me about your family. Feeling of love, cohesion, healthy communication, connecting rituals, things like birthday parties or a special movie that you watch every year. When you were at your best professionally, what was your family life like? These are yours to keep. No one else will see them. Your faith. When you were at your best professionally, did you have an established belief? Genuine connection? Was it part of your daily routine? Active involvement? If you've got all of those, then it's a big fat plus. Circle it. Make a decision otherwise. Friends. Do you have 5 at hand? Did you then have 5 at hand? Did they have a fireman mentality? When you sounded the klaxon, would they come running to help you? When you were at your professional best, where were they? Fireman mentality. Honest communications and reciprocal. And the last is your health. When you were at your professional best, appearance, tone, daily exercise, managed diet. If you got all of those, circle the plus. If it's something else, I want you to take a moment and go ahead and circle it in a different way. You know, I think about this time in my life, about how powerful it was. 2 years ago, I caught something about John Venable that I thought was pretty cool. I went to see Wicked. Have you heard about that play in New York City? And I went in and I'd heard about it, but from the time the curtain went up until the time it went down, I was just beaming ear to ear. I couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't the fact that I love plays. I certainly enjoyed that one. But looking at these 2 starlets at their absolute best, living that role that they had always dreamed about, was something that I reveled in. We all do. When you get to see somebody else doing their best, you get an impression. 2 days after I saw that play, one of those 2 girls was on an interview. And they said, what's it like being one of the 2 stars on Wicked? And she said, it's fabulous. I love my job. This is absolutely at the pinnacle of my life. But people have a misconception that when you're living the best you ever thought about being in your professional life, that everything else is just as good. And it's not, she said. And I thought that was very telling. Ladies and gentlemen, right now in your life, you have an opportunity to take a good peek. It's a hard time, and as you are trying to run as fast as you can from the loss of a job or in your transition into the next role, I urge you to take a holistic look. For no other reason than what you're going to find out in the pages that follow. Tides turn, the winds change, weather fronts come in for all of us, and mine literally and figuratively was about to change. My wife was pregnant. We drove from Fayetteville, North Carolina, down to Montgomery, Alabama. I'd been selected for a special school. Special meaning it meant that I was on an upward trajectory. That it was a culling point, and I was going to go to Air Command and Staff College at Maxwell Air Force Base, be out of the flying community for 1 year, and during that time, I would meet people just like myself in every other career specialty you could name in the Air Force and several other services. We got down there, we were pretty excited, bought it, and then I rented a house that had this pool in the back, and there was going to be some academics, and then there was going to be some sun tanning, and it was going to be good. But then something strange happened. October 4th, we're 100 miles inland, and we got hit by Hurricane Opal, a Category 2 hurricane, came through with 80 knots sustained through Montgomery. And Montgomery's really not built for that. Our house certainly wasn't. And that storm came through. There were tornadoes all over the area. We didn't get hit. The city didn't get hit. Lightning, heavy winds. But when it passed, I got outside and I looked at that beautiful pool area, and pretty much it was a swamp with all of the debris from the neighborhood in that pool. Our patio furniture had been picked up and slammed against the wall, and shards of glass that had been plexiglass, no bigger than my thumb, was left, and they were completely turned opaque. I never got that. They went from clear to black. I'm just kind of standing there staring at it. My wife came out and said, "Does everything go?" "Oh, got it just fine, baby. You just go back inside." I got it under. I looked up at God and said, "God, I've got it. I've got it." I cleaned that pool up. I set ourselves up, repaired the damage to our rental property, and then we were on. October ended into the November 6th time frame. My beautiful wife was expecting our first child, due December 9th. And she went in on November 7th for a kind of a standard measure tape thing. Air Force didn't have any sophisticated equipment like sonograms back in the 90s. And so they measured my wife's tummy, they gave her a couple of tests and sent her on her way. I was in class that morning, and about half an hour after her little session with the doctor ended, I got a call in class that said, "Go get your wife and bring her here as quickly as you can." I found her at the commissary, and we drove back over to the base hospital, and within 15 minutes we're in an ambulance going downtown because they couldn't handle the problems that we were having in the facilities on base. Montgomery Baptist Hospital, we got in, we were briefed within probably 45 minutes of what was going on. They did some more tests, but it looked like the baby's feeding sac, the placenta, had died. And our little man was starving to death in my wife's tummy. They did some math, and I had to make some hard decisions. For some of you, you've had to make decisions like that in your life, but I pray to God that the rest of you don't have to go, because they are bone-crushing. They are bone-crushing. 2 days later, we had a C-section, and I was in the operating room when they pulled that little man out of my wife's tummy. He weighed 3 pounds 5 ounces, and he was in distress. Over the course of the next 7 days, he would stop breathing 4 times, just because he forgot. Things settled in. He got a little bit better. He lost 5 ounces and then started putting on 1/4 of an ounce at a time. At the 2-week point, I took my wife in to get the staples removed from her tummy in the C-section, and when the doctor popped that first staple, blood and tissue blew out all over the table. And the second one, and the third one, and that wound opened up. It was 2 inches wide, 4 inches long, and 2 inches deep, and And my wife was just ashen. She was just crushed. She didn't need that. The doctor looked over at me and said, "Sir, I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't sew it back up. It's going to have to heal from the inside." For the next 2 months, while that thing started closing up, I cleaned it out twice a day. And I didn't think about it. My wife wouldn't look at it because it was a constant reminder of how she failed to take that baby to term. The emotions that were sailing through our house, as you can imagine, ran through the roof. We got the baby home after 5 weeks, weighed 4 pounds. Mama wouldn't let him out of her side. Christmas came, a little bit rocky. January, and then February, and it looked like the cloud was about to lift, and then 5/20, March 5th, you could have read a book in our bedroom from the lightning strikes that were taking place outside. One after another. It sounded like our house was under siege. And when I heard the freight train coming, I knew what to do. And I grabbed the baby, grabbed my wife, our dog. We went in, pulled a blanket up over us in the bathtub, and that tornado touched down about 400 feet west of our house. And very thankfully, it continued moving west. Destroyed a field house 400 yards west of us, and a small family lost their lives about 1.5 miles west. For us that day, I got out and I surveyed the damage, and that pool was just swamp again. And that new furniture that we had bought had been crushed up against that same brick wall. And this time when I looked up, I wasn't feeling like I was the king of the world anymore. This time when I looked up, the weight of the world started coming down on my shoulders. And I got tired, the kind of tired I couldn't shake. I've never been depressed before in my life, and I'm not sure I was back then. I don't think I was, but I couldn't shake this feeling, this drain, this absolute mire. I couldn't work out anymore. I didn't have the consciousness to read my books from school. Something was wrong. I started having a hard time swallowing. If you know anything about fighter pilots and flight surgeons, then you know what I'm about to tell you was a big sacrifice. If you think about cops and robbers, and a robber going up to a cop and asking him for help, it's pretty much the same thing. I got to a point where I was so desperate, I actually went to a flight surgeon. And I had a chat with him. And I talked to him for a while, and they ran a battery of tests on me, and when they gave me a complete flight physical, they found the problem that was wrong with my neck. Double hernia. If that makes any sense to you, it didn't make any sense to me then either. Double hernia scheduled for repair the first Wednesday in June. And then they ran some more tests. Go in, have this double hernia repaired. And I'd love to tell you that this was comical, but it really was. The anesthetist nurse, now please don't think I'm making it up. I can't make this up. Her name was Hiawatha. And Hiawatha had an act downtown. It was a comedy routine that was a killer. At least she had to have, because she was the funniest person I've ever met in my life. And she had me in stitches literally as they put the mask on. I go out, come back out, there's Hiawatha again, groggy, remember some of it, but just laugh. I just laugh. I go home, outpatient surgery, outpatient. I get to go home to our temporary living facility because our household goods had been shipped to England 2 weeks prior to that. Go across the street and wait and wait. Friday rolls around, my ENT specialist calls me and says, "JV, we got an issue. We need to do some exploratory surgery. We'd like you to come in next Wednesday morning, and we're going to cut a tumor out of your throat, and then we're going to have to send it away for a biopsy, and then we'll find out whether it's cancerous or not." I said, "No sweat, doc, we'll see you Wednesday morning." Wednesday morning rolls around, get on the gurney, they wheel me down to get put out, and there's Hiawatha again. And she looks at me and she goes, "Look, I know I'm funny, But people don't actually try to get back into an operating room just to hear me talk. Is that what you're trying to do? And that's when her routine continued until they put the mask back on. Get out of the mask, and now I'm just fat and dumb and happy. They cut on me. They send me back to the recovery room. I spend the night in the hospital, and then we wait. I told the doctor. The doctor was a very Christian man. His name was Jonathan King, quietly so, but very prayerful man. I told him Friday, I said, Doc, it doesn't matter when the results come in. I want you to call me, and I want you to tell me. I want you to tell me whether it is or isn't. And if it is, that's okay too. Saturday morning, I got a little restless. Our TLF was very small. I got up off of this couch bed that I was on, and I walked over, and I sat on our Formica kitchen table, and I stared at the phone, and a voice of peace, a voice of calm, whispered in my ear, and it said, "You have cancer." And there was no question what I heard, but there was nobody standing behind me. The phone rang about 2 minutes later, and it was Jonathan King. And they said, JV, I've got some bad news. It is cancer, and we're going to need to operate again on you on Wednesday morning. So, we moved forward. I began to think about it long and hard. My history, our family history with cancer was bad. My mom died when I was 19 of breast cancer that turned to liver cancer. My baby sister was in her 9th year with ovarian cancer when I was diagnosed. Both of my grandfathers had died of cancer, and so I was pretty conscious going into the last surgery of what this might mean. They were going to remove the rest of my thyroid gland, and then there would be treatment beyond. Wheel me down to the area where they were going to anesthetize me, and there's Hiawatha. And Hiawatha just absolutely crushed me. She had joke after joke after joke. I don't know if she knew I was coming, but she splayed me out. Fighter pilot, not very bright. Is that the math I'm supposed to get here? It rolled from there, right? Coming out of the operation, there's Hiawatha again. And the reason I'm telling you about Hiawatha is because she had such a huge impact on me. I don't know what her last name was. I never found out about it. But wherever you are in your situation right now, surround yourself with positive people, people who are uplifting, and who will look beyond your situation and lead you in the place that you need to be. Hiawatha, when I left the recovery room, I literally remember very little, except I was laughing. Come up to my hospital bed, and there are 11 of the most dirge-like people you've ever met in your life. There's my dad and my stepmom. Both had lost spouses to cancer. There's my wife and our baby, and my wife is expecting that I will be lost to cancer. Maybe there's doubts in her mind. Right next to her was my best friend in the area, Chris Chambliss, who had been a Thunderbird and hated it. And he goes on, and I look at these people, and I look at them, and they're all just like about to burst into tears. And I'm thinking, well, Hiawatha was a whole lot more fun to be around. And I tried to think of the funniest thing I could think of to say, and I lifted my head off the bed, and I looked at him, and I said, well, I guess this means I won't be a Thunderbird now, huh? Turns out that wasn't very funny. It turns out that the room didn't crack up, but it was something out of the blue, that I kept with me as I slept and for the next several days. On Monday, I went back to see the doctor. And I said, Doc, you know, I'm a guy of analogies, and my family history's not very good. Five folks, not such a good track record. You know my disease, papillary follicular mix. You know it was widely invasive. You know the tumor size was beyond a couple of thresholds. What are my odds of beating this disease? What are my odds? And I knew I was in trouble when he wouldn't answer that question. He just told me I would never fly again. And he told me to do my best to beat the disease and live a healthy life with my family. Ladies and gentlemen, there was nothing more bone crushing, no bigger piece of information that I could have received than that. And at the same time, there was no greater gift that I could have been given, because it took my focus into a different direction. You know, these friends that were firemen, you know, it turns out that we're a pretty healthy group. We really don't know what to say to each other when we get sick. We really don't. One by one, these folks started leaving the area. It was a one-year assignment, and they started moving away to their next career step. And while they were there on the phone, they weren't there when I needed them to help. You know, that incredible foundation that I had built, this John Venable might as well have been beating himself on the chest saying, look at me, now look at what's left. A struggling marriage and a new faith in Christ. You know, it turns out that was enough. It turns out that those two legs kept my table from collapsing on the table, on the floor. It turns out that those two things kept me moving forward. Next step in the recovery process, JV, we got to give you a blast of radiation. It's going to be a big one. John Venable, not being very bright, needed a couple of reinforcing rounds on that. We're going to take you into an isolated part of the hospital. We're going to give you 2 big horse pills that are radioactive iodine. And you swallow those, and they're going to go out and kill all the bad cells, but you know they're pretty radioactive, and so you want to flush it through your system as fast as you can. Okay, got it. I got it. Oh, by the way, pretty highly radioactive. And so you kind of can't be in the same bed with your wife for about 3 weeks. Oh, okay, still not getting it. And you can't hold your baby for 6 weeks. Okay, I got it. I've got it. Again, back into the I can handle it, but I wasn't getting it. I go into this isolated ward. Literally, it was something out of a bad nightmare movie. Walk back into this room, and the room has paper wrapped around everything. Walk over to the bed. The bed linens look old and tattered. Everything is disposable in the room. There's a big tub of Gatorade right next to it. And there's a light bulb on the table next to the bed. I look around, everything's disposable. They're going to burn everything here. They're going to throw it away. I get that. The doctor walks in with this lead-lined can, sets it on the floor, and he reaches in with some big tongs, and he pulls out these 2 pills, and it drops them in my hand. Okay, he won't handle it with his own hands. That's probably pretty radioactive. I throw them back. I take a swig of water, and the 2 guys literally run out of the room. And they close this lead curtain behind the door when they do, and I go, that's pretty interesting. Look around. I'm seeing everything okay, and about 30 seconds later, this guy comes in with a Geiger counter, opens the door, lifts it, and it sounds like it's getting ready to detonate. Pulls it back down, slam, the door is closed. And that's when it hit me. I turned over and I looked at that light bulb next to the bed, and this was the ultimate test. If I had screwed that light bulb into the room, I knew I would light up the room. I was a little faster.
Goodness.
Never lose your sense of humor. You know, for the next several weeks and months, I was kind of lost. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a dream. Didn't have a place that I was heading for. I didn't have anybody to talk to. My wife and child were in California. All my friends had left, and basically I was walking around our apartment complex. Go back and sit down, and I was talking to God. Probably the healthiest conversations that I've ever had. probably the healthiest conversation. Something very odd started happening, though. I'd go back into the hospital for a visit, and I would see these images everywhere, walk by a computer, and these screensavers would pop up, and it would be the Thunderbird emblem. I turned on the television, and there was an interview with the Thunderbirds. They weren't coming to town. At night, I would go to bed, fall asleep, and I could see the image of me, Thunderbird, flying out of my neck. Over and over. It was like the worst kind of nightmare. You see, the Thunderbirds, in my wildest imagination, the Thunderbirds, they took astronaut physicals. The reason they did that was because you couldn't replace anybody on the team. There was only one guy trained for each position. They didn't accept people with my kind of record. And so I kind of got mad. But the more I walked around, the more I saw it, and I just thought, well, why not? Why not be that guy who throws that rock back up on the horizon? Why not step into that role? Absolutely whimsical, but it would keep me moving forward. But every time I thought about it, I was no longer that 10-year-old boy. I was a 35, 36-year-old man, and I knew everything that could stop me. The medical evaluation board was 2 years away. Medical evaluation board, they would take my 2 Encyclopedia Britannica volumes of medical records, and 5 doctors would review it, and they didn't care who I was. And they would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. The thumbs up was you get to stay in the Air Force on a non-flying role, and the thumbs down was we're going to medically retire you, which is code for you're not going to live very much longer. And I kept thinking, and I kept thinking. And it's odd how some of our training kind of fits in at times and some doesn't. And one of the things that I thought whimsically about was one day I was debriefing a really complicated weapons school ride. And they're very intimidating. The instructors, the people they bring in to fly with, very intimidating. And I got to a point in this debrief where I really didn't know what to say next. And I kind of froze. The ops officer for the F-16 division there, one of the most intimidating guys I've ever met, looks at me and goes, JV, throw a rock. Throw a rock. And I looked at him and I go, K-Bob, what the hell does that mean? And he said, if you don't know what to do, pick up a rock and throw it. And when you follow that rock to its landing point, when you get there, take a look around, and if it makes sense, then keep that rock. And if it doesn't, throw that rock again. And I thought about that conversation over and over again, and I decided to throw a rock. Why not? Who's going to say no if I get halfway to this absolutely ludicrous goal of being the Thunderbird commander? Maybe I'll be in the flying cockpit again. Maybe I will. And so I, just like when I was a kid, I had a crystal clear picture of where I wanted to go. It may have been unrealistic in everybody else's mind, ladies and gentlemen, but I knew the sights and the sounds. I knew what it would feel like to be in those airplanes flying that position. I could actually visualize myself in that role. If you want to climb out from where you are now to where you want to be, you've got to have a clear idea of what it is. It's not just to get an accounting position. It's to be with Deloitte at the corner of G and 14 on the 8th floor where all the high rollers are in the company. That's fidelity. That's desire and focus. And in order to get there, in order to become this Thunderbird commander in 3 years, I picked out 3 Neanderthal things that I couldn't forget. The first thing I had to do was get myself into physical shape again. Not just into John Venable shape, but into the undeniable Olympian kind of shape to where any doctor looking at me would say, he's not just a pass, he's much better than that. And so I started walking a little bit further every day. In 2 years, I knew that would lead potentially to me beating this medical evaluation board. The next step was to get back in the F-16, and then if I got that close, why wouldn't they pick me? Why wouldn't they? ladies and gentlemen, I just decided to start moving forward from there. If you pick someplace audacious, if you pick someplace bold to go, if you pick someplace that you really want to be, life is kind of funny. The people around you will be kind of funny. And the walking will be easy at first, putting one foot in front of the other, but then life is funny in the sense that it will rise up and challenge to see what kind of metal you're made out of. And this verse is one of my favorite, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance. It's the only book in the world that will tell you where you get perseverance. It's not your faith in your friends, but it absolutely is your faith in your friends. It's not your family's faith in you. It absolutely is your family's faith in you. And it's your faith in God. How much do you trust that entity, that being? How far are you willing to extend yourself in order to move forward? And my first step in that was a horrible one. We got to England, everything was going great. Started running on a treadmill every morning, cycling every day, every other day. Some days I would work out, some days I would run. But right around Thanksgiving of our first fall in England, we got a call that my baby sister, after fighting that disease for 9 years, had lost her battle. My wife and I flew back to Bridgeport, New Jersey, and you know, I'd always been the funny one in the family. I'd always been the guy who had the clever thing to say, and my family asked if I would give the eulogy, and I said very hesitantly I would. When I stepped in front of that room full of people and I put my hand on my baby sister's coffin, I just died. For 15 minutes I punished people in that room in a way that I could never have imagined. And when I walked away, I just was the smallest human being that you've ever run across. The flight back to England was brutal, and I sat down and I talked to my wife about it. But I had the biggest thoughts about myself. How I had let her down turned from there into, how can I ever beat this disease? And I had to make a choice. I had a baby, I had my wife, and I had me to care for. I didn't want anybody feeling sorry. So I could choose to put my life in the hands of doctors, or I could choose to persevere. And I chose to double down. I started running faster and faster in the morning and working out at lunch. And over the course of a very short period of time, 7 months, I turned my physical body around. Things started looking better. My attitude became brighter. Those 2 legs underneath my table, they began a little fatter, and I used them as leverage to kind of help lift up that center leg. Our lives became better and better, and over time, ladies and gentlemen, there was something about the momentum that caught my wife up and the people around me to a point where I wasn't that guy anymore. I was just one of the people around. I was just somebody in a group as opposed to that pathetic human being over there that's battling cancer. I don't know about you, but the worst thing you could ever do for me is feel sorry for me. I never want to feel that ever again in my life. And this place where I moved to, it gave me a little bit of my power back. But don't think, ladies and gentlemen, when you meet the first storm and you meet it head on, that things are going to get better. You've got to be ready for the next challenge, and the next challenge, and the next challenge, and every time you meet it, you can't give up. Went in for my first blood work in England. Flight surgeons in the Air Force, they run the gamut, just like they do in every other profession, and I know some brilliant ones. But the one I met at Lakenheath that day wasn't that guy. I walked in and I said, "Doc, I know my disease pretty well. This is the blood work that you need to order in order to get all of the tumor markers and the things in order to make a decision on me. We need to build a portfolio, a track record that says that I'm cancer-free. We need to do that." And he looked at me and said, "I know what I'm doing." 2 days later, I came back and he gave me the results of my blood work, and and I had a recurrence of cancer. And I looked at him and I said, okay, I understand what you're saying, but Doc, can I see that piece of paper that you're looking at? And he slid it across the table, and I looked at it and I said, Doc, this is the wrong test. This is antibodies. I'll have antibodies for the rest of my life. Thyroglobulin is a tumor marker. Could you reorder the test? And this doctor looked at me and said, you're in denial. I'll see you in 3 months. He wouldn't order another test. I called him back in 3 months, and he was TDY for 3 months. Went to not an exercise, but to the Persian Gulf, where we had a steady presence there. And he told everybody in the shop there that this was his case and not to help me out. 3 more months go by. He's there. Now I'm at the 9-month point. The 9-month point of believing in the back of my head there may be a recurrence of cancer. I call, and they won't help me out. So I found the right number, and I called his boss's boss. It's a guy named Dr. Bartlett. Not that I remember, but I remember. And I called Dr. Bartlett. Now, I was a major then, and if you know anything about the hierarchy in the military, it's pretty lockstep. This was a colonel I was talking to, and I said, Colonel Bartlett, I've been to your shop, and I was told I had a recurrence of cancer. I've called you countless times. I've asked for your people to help me. Tomorrow, I'm going to come to your office at 9 o'clock, and I expect to see you there. If you're not there, Dr. Bartlett, that'll be okay. I'll find you wherever you are in the hospital. And you can understand there, sir, that whatever aggravation you're hearing now on the phone will be amplified by some significant margin at that time. And I hung up the phone. I walked into his office the next morning, and there was Colonel Dr. Bartlett. And he goes, hey, I understand you've had some hard times. I'm sure it was just a little bit of misunderstanding. And I all but stood on his desk. John Venable was raised in Birmingham, Alabama. I am probably the most respectful person in or outside the Air Force that you will ever meet. And I looked at this man, and I pushed that respect aside. And I said, you've got it wrong, Colonel. You have done everything in your power, and your people have done everything in their power to not help me out. You have not just actively thwarted, you've shut this hospital access down to me. And so, Dr. Bartlett, when I walk out of the hospital today, we're going to have a solution to my problem, or I will do everything I can to not just ruin your Air Force career, but to publicly humiliate you. You see, stories like mine are wildfire on 2020 and 60 Minutes. And Dr. Bartlett, I know this is not your fault, but it's sure going to seem like it if you don't fix this. Dr. Bartlett stood up. We walked down the hallway to the lab, and before they drew another lab, he decided to go in and pull my records. And in 1996, 1997, they were hand transcribing it over from one copy to another. And they had just transcribed the data wrong. Dr. Bartlett looked at me and said, see, it's a simple error. It's just a clerical error, and everything is okay. And that's when I about blew a gasket. And I said, no, you don't understand. For 9 months, you've told my family that I've had a recurrence of cancer. Dr. Bartlett, those are 9 months that I could have been building a resume for a medical evaluation board that's going to take place in 3 months. You need to help me out. And I don't know what it was or how I said it. I don't know. But Dr. Bartlett turned and said, come with me. And we walked down to another flight surgeon there who was a major. And he set my medical records on his desk, and he said, I want you to write his medical evaluation board paperwork, and I want you to have it on my desk tomorrow morning. In the next 3 weeks, my medical evaluation board package left with his name on it. And then something unbelievable happened. I wasn't just reinstated onto active duty. I was picked up with the ability to go fly the F-16 again.
Yeah.
And within 3 months, I had an assignment to Nellis Air Force Base, to a small organization there that had nothing to do with anything important. But I was going back to fly the F-16. Got to F-16 school, went through it, graduated in late December, early January of 1999. And that day, the Thunderbirds issued a calling message to the Air Force for the commander and demonstration leader position of the Thunderbirds. I put in my application there, ladies and gentlemen, and a series of miracles that are unexplainable happened. People who were supposed to see it and scour it for medical clearances, they overlooked it. And I was the one candidate that was sent forward for approval to the guy who was going to make the selection. This last piece, your picture, your plan, and your perseverance, this thought process of belief cannot be understated. You've got to develop a belief in yourself that is so powerful, and the only way you're going to do that is by knocking out the small tasks. Here at CNM, it's going through and mastering every table. There in my life, it was making sure that I knew everything I could about the disease, and then filling every question that anybody could possibly have with honesty and sincerity. But it's belief bigger than that. You've got to know that you are the most unique person that's ever walked the face of the earth. There's something special about you, something that nobody else has. Some faculties that are absolutely paramount to an organization that are out there, and you've got to remember how powerful that is and will be for an organization, and you've got to well up that confidence. And when you reach out and you reach for that big brass ring, reach for somebody else. There's a God who loves you more than anybody else possibly can, throughout your rights and wrongs in this life and beyond. And if you will reach for that hand will pull you wherever you want to go. I stepped into this job, into a job of my dreams, in the fall of 1999. 3 years to the day when I had the courage to tell my wife that this is what I was going to do and this is where I was leading us. I walked into that job and I was baffled. I could not figure for the life of me why I had been picked, why I had made the cut. So I picked up the phone and I called that unit at Lake and Heath, England. And I go, hey, look, I don't know what to say about this, but can you tell me why I was reinstated? Many packages for the medical evaluation board showed up to Lake and Heath, and many packages were screened, but there was only one that had a colonel's hand right there. If I think about this, it just kills me. If I had passed every test, if that flight surgeon had not been such an inept person, if he had taken my blood work and he had put it in the process, I may have been reinstated in the Air Force to go do a job that I never would have wanted to do. But because of his ineptitude and every blocking mechanism en route, ladies and gentlemen, that man hand-carried my records in there and gave them to the board in a way that put me over the top. It's unbelievable. It's so hard to fathom this thought process, but it gets worse. It gets worse. I think about this day and night. Of all of the trials that I've ever had, of all of the dreams that I've ever wanted, the biggest dream that I was ever given was to be the commander and demonstration leader of the United States Air Force Thunderbird. And I believe that God gave me that dream. I believe that that dream is the only reason why I was able to pull myself up out of the darkest days and beat the disease of cancer. God gave me a dream that allowed me to beat cancer. And I believe the only reason that God allowed me to achieve my dream was through the gift He gave me in the disease of cancer. I don't know what's going on in your life right now. I don't know how bad things are financially. I don't know what your situation at home is. But I got to tell you, you don't know how bright it can be on the other side. You don't know why you're being tested the way you are. But if you will do everything you can to help God manifest your success, there's brilliance waiting for you on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, this is so important for you to get. It's the next line out of James. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete and not lacking anything. I'm better today for the trial. And I pray to God that you're better tomorrow because of yours. Put your dream on the horizon and drive for it. Above all other people, believe in yourself, and with persistence and faith in a being that loves you more than anybody else, you can step into any dream. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, climbing into mine was something else.
In the sun goes down, I was sitting in town.
John, we have time for a couple questions, is there any out there?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't know whether they covered everything you could ever think of. Are there any quick questions before? I let you
Got a
guys
question
off?
up here. What's the G-force going straight up? It's actually just one G going up. There was times where we pulled a lot of G's in that, but this one was just, that was just hootful to go. It's one of the great joys in the demonstration. Well, peel backs. Peel backs. Any other questions? Anything?
Do you keep in touch with?
How long did you fly with the Thunderbirds?
It's 2 years, a controlled tour. Unless something bad happens, then they want you to come and go pretty quickly. So you have a training season that lasts about 3.5 months on the front. I took command in January of 2000 and then relinquished command January of 2002. So it's almost exactly 2 years, and then they kick you out. So they don't want it to be a career path. But yes, ma'am.
Did you ever connect back up with Colonel Bartlett buying the
I never did, and
Can you repeat that question, John?
Yeah, did I ever connect back with Colonel Bartlett, the guy who walked my records in? I never did. He retired before I had a chance to go back and thank him. And Hiawatha, wherever she is, I'd love to see her again. So.
One more question, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your service.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing the heights and the lows.
Thank you, ma'am. God bless you.
I lied about one more question, we have time for more, I didn't look at the clock. Yes.
Keep fighting the fight. It's one of the things about cancer that's very hard for people who've never had it to understand is the next blood test could be bad, or the one after that. I've had 9, I think it's now 9 blood tests that have gone bad that have turned out to be none. But every one, you just wonder if it's going to be the one where you have the recurring. So when you've had it, it's a lifelong battle. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Are the Thunderbirds similar to Blue Angels?
Yes, ma'am. If you can't become a Thunderbird, always that other service. We had a great relationship with them, and they're a great group of guys. The 2 guys that were commanders were actually on a kind of lopsided tour. They're also two-year tours, but we have 1-year pairing with each one of them as we cycle through. And the 2 guys, one is I think a 3-star flag right now, and the other one is retired in Colorado. It's a fabulous guy named Icefield. Yeah, they're a great group of folks, and very similar.
Some over here, John, on the left.
Yes, ma'am. Say that again. What is? Oh, my oldest son, the boy you saw the picture of, graduates from high school in a week and a half. Fabulous kid. We are part of First Baptist Alexandria, which is over on King Street and almost in Old Town. And they've been part of the youth ministry there and doing mission trips every summer. So I'm very proud of them, and they're both believers, which is one of the. I think if there's a gift that I could give either one of them, that would be the primary one, and everything else my wife has given them. Everything. So, but my wife is also a believer, so it's a pretty cool household. Yes, ma'am.
If you're not used to dreaming big, do you have advice for those of us who don't dream that big?
Throw a rock. Throw a rock. And this is my advice to you. If you don't know what to do, listening on the couch is no place to be. If you don't know what you want to be, pick up a rock and throw it and start following it. And when you get there, and you got to work hard to get any place, pick it up, take a look around, and if you like where you are, make it an incredible place. If you don't, pick that rock up and throw it again. You're never too old. Never too old to dream. Never too old. Yes, sir. I did. Actually, the Red Arrows, did I have any involvement with the Red Arrows? They're the United Kingdom British jet demonstration team. And we actually did a European tour my first year, and I got to ride in the back seat during one of their demonstrations. Fabulous group of folks. And I think they fly with like 100 airplanes at a time. There were airplanes everywhere. We only fly with 6, and I think theirs is an 8-ship demonstration, if I remember right. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so you're very inspiring for me, and I think, do you think that I can get your email, so if I have any questions, so I can email you?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, those cards that I gave you, if you look on the back side, there's actually a game plan you can fill out for yourself, you know, what your picture is, the 4 steps you want to get there. But if you look at the bottom of the card, there's my website, which is tbird1.com, and then on the other side it's jv@tbird1.com. And the email is also up here at the bottom. I would love to connect with you all. Just send me a note on LinkedIn that says, hey, I saw you, I fell asleep during your presentation. and I would love to connect with you, and I'll make that happen. I would love to. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Everybody, if it seems like I'm hard of hearing, I did spend a lot of time around jets.
I just wanted to thank you for your bravery in the face of danger, and all these people that said no, you didn't listen to anything no matter what. And everybody sometimes has to do that. I'm so glad to hear somebody say that these days, because we're not seeing that enough. Thank you.
It's absolutely a pleasure. And I don't know if I was dropped on my head too many times, but I'm just too bullheaded, and I don't have a lot of give up in me. And if you can carry one of the things out of this room, it would be that. Don't ever give up on yourself. You're too special. Anybody else?
So John, I have one. So that's a really amazing story and a tough, amazing climb. So it's probably hard to find the next stage of life to equal that level of excitement of being a Thunderbird. So after coming off of that and setting your next goal to be a professional speaker, what have you found that you've been able to use this same process and some of those same steps as you're trying to climb that next mountain?
If you've ever met the worst person in the room, it's Bob Korzeniowski. I love him. I'm a huge fan. And this is, have you ever heard the subject, if you want to learn something, teach it? Yeah. And it's very true. Every time I go to hand one of these cards out, I look out on the back side and I go, when was the last time you renewed your goals? When was the last time you looked over it? And do you really buy into it? And Bob, that's the thing. It's putting forward the goal of being the most well-known, most genuine public speaker in the United States today. And then the 4 steps that I need to get there. The first one is the book, and through Bob's help, I'll finish that sometime this lifetime. I've got 225 pages down, and when I look back through it and I read it, sometimes it's awfully cringeful to think that I actually graduated from high school. but I'm looking at finishing that, and that's the first step into the 4 that'll take me where I need to be, where I want to be.
And we've made a lot of progress on that lately, so I see you climbing that mountain hard right now. You're in the afterburner stage.
Yes, sir, I'm working hard at it, but it is not easy, that's for sure. I'm very grateful for the question, and ladies and gentlemen, if you think I come here on Tuesday nights because there's a lot of money in it for me, or notoriety, or anything else, it's because of that man and the opportunity to plug into everybody who comes in here. There's an energy here like few other places that you'll ever find in your adult life. Take advantage of it. And when you do find that plug and you flip on the switch, I'll guarantee you it's a place that you want to walk away from. 4 years and counting. 4 years and counting, and I'm grateful for every one of them, Bob.
Thank you, John. We'd like media close us in prayers, and certainly want to keep track of when John Venable is speaking next. His elevator pitch is just as good.
Shall we stand to honor God? Father, thank you. You give us so much when you stand your servant before us, and he testifies to your goodness and grace every time he does. Thank you for him. And thank you for us. Please send us out of here in safety and in peace. And as you do, send us under your banner this week. Reteach the lessons that we have learned here this night. Send us forth knowing that you created us. Only one of us in a whole universe. Incredible, invincible, victorious. We love you. Amen.
Amen.